January 2020, a cold, windy night enveloped Route 29 near Frostville, Oregon. Typically quiet and nearly deserted during the winter months, this road bore witness to something horrifying that evening. Around 3 a.m., Patrol Officer John Kelly spotted a car parked along the shoulder. From his experience, abandoned vehicles rarely signaled anything good. The car was empty, its headlights off, but the driver's side door was left slightly ajar. Armed with a flashlight, Kelly cautiously approached the vehicle and ran its registration. It belonged to Detective Jack Porter, a well-known figure in the local police department. Jack was infamous for his relentless determination and high success rate, someone who never left a case unresolved. A few meters from the car, in the snow, Kelly discovered Jack's body. He lay motionless, his service pistol by his side. Signs of a struggle around the scene suggested he had fought back. The detective's death sent shockwaves through the community. In the small town of Frostville, Jack was almost a legend. He had cracked complex cases others deemed unsolvable, embodying a fierce dedication to justice. So when the news of his death spread, it hit the town like a gut punch, leaving those who knew him reeling. The first hours of the investigation hinted that this was no accident. The crime scene was thoroughly examined. The autopsy revealed a single gunshot wound to Jack's chest, but the bruises on his hands and face indicated he had fought to his last breath. His phone, found smashed near the car, provided no clues. The last call had been wiped from its memory. Frostville was gripped by unease. Who could have killed a man who symbolized integrity? Investigators began searching for witnesses, but surveillance cameras along Route 29 were scarce. Locals speculated that someone might have passed through that night, yet no one reported suspicious sounds or vehicles. From the start, it was clear this would be a challenging case. Jack's department demanded swift action, but understood that restoring public trust would take much longer. A sense of unseen danger loomed over the town. Who was behind this murder? Why had Jack, a man devoted to fighting injustice, become a victim? Was this a crime of personal revenge or something far more sinister? Every passing moment only increased the pressure on investigators, who knew the truth might prove more dangerous than they ever imagined. The investigation into Detective Jack Porter's death began with a chaotic search for answers. Investigators knew they had to meticulously piece together his last days to reconstruct the sequence of events. The first step was obtaining footage from surveillance cameras near Route 29 and in areas Jack had recently visited. One camera in the center of Frostville provided a critical lead. On the evening before his death, Jack had met with Captain Brendan Hale at the Snowy Dawn Cafe. Brendan, a seasoned officer and Jack's mentor, had supported him since his early days on the force. Their relationship always seemed friendly. However, during his interrogation, Brendan acted strangely. He appeared tense, avoided direct eye contact, and his answers were overly cautious. When asked about his meeting with Jack, he replied curtly, "We discussed work, nothing important." But the investigators sensed he was hiding something. Next, they searched Jack's home. Outwardly, it was an ordinary house, but inside there was an atmosphere of tension. In his study, the detectives found a locked safe. After several attempts, they managed to open it. Inside were documents not listed in any official police records. These files pertained to a mysterious operation codenamed Cold Trail. They detailed an internal investigation into corruption within the Frostville police. Among the materials were financial records, letters, and even recorded phone calls. Moreover, Brendan Hale's name appeared prominently. The files revealed that Jack had been secretly working on this case, not trusting even his closest colleagues. The discovery of these files sent shockwaves through the investigative team. Operation Cold Trail was a complete surprise. The documents mentioned suspicious transactions involving large sums of money flowing through accounts linked to several police officials. It seemed Jack was close to exposing a large-scale corruption scheme. But why had he decided to tackle this case alone? Perhaps Jack feared that someone in his circle could be implicated? Or was it a matter of personal safety? At the same time, another intriguing detail emerged. An officer reviewing footage from cameras near the cafe noticed that after his meeting with Brendan, Jack headed off in an unknown direction, his face visibly troubled. It gave the impression that he was aware of the danger but chose to act alone. The investigators contacted Jack's family. His wife, Sarah, was devastated and could not understand what had driven her husband to take on such a dangerous case by himself. She recalled that in the weeks leading up to his death, Jack came home late and seemed exhausted, but assured her everything was fine. Each new discovery only deepened the mystery. It was vital to determine whether Brendan was indeed involved in corruption or even the murder. And if so, what other secrets did Jack's safe conceal? The investigation, which initially seemed straightforward, quickly unraveled into a web of secrets. Operation Cold Trail raised more questions than answers, but the main focus remained on Captain Brendan Hale. He was the last person to see Jack alive, and investigators decided to scrutinize their relationship and potential motives that could have led to conflict. The documents found in Jack's safe hinted at a deep corruption network within the Frostville police. The names mentioned in the files included not only high-ranking officials, but also businessmen with dubious reputations. Jack had been investigating illegal drug trafficking, and the documents revealed connections between several criminal groups and the police. At the center of it all was a warehouse owned by a private company that repeatedly appeared in the investigation. A crucial lead came from a security guard who worked at the warehouse. He reported seeing Jack and Brendan arguing near the building the day before the murder. Investigators immediately searched the site. The warehouse appeared abandoned, but hidden rooms inside contained remnants of narcotics and records of illicit transactions. Meanwhile, the team delved into Brendan's connections. He had always been known as a strict but fair leader. However, his behavior had recently changed. Colleagues noted that he had become more reclusive, often disappearing without explanation, and his financial situation had unexpectedly improved. It was revealed that just days before Jack's death, Brendan had made a substantial transfer to an overseas account. The evidence against Brendan was mounting, but the case suddenly took a new turn. In Jack's abandoned car, detectives found a flash drive they had previously overlooked. It contained video recordings that became a bombshell for the investigation. The footage showed several meetings between Brendan and suspicious individuals, including members of the Sarmo of local criminal groups. The most alarming moment was a clip where Brendan openly discussed the need to remove the problem interfering with their operations. While Jack's name was not explicitly mentioned, the context strongly implied he was the target of this conversation. The situation escalated. Brendan became the primary suspect, but he continued to deny any involvement. During questioning, he claimed that Jack often exaggerated threats and could have been mistaken in his conclusions. However, the investigators remained unconvinced. All evidence pointed to Brendan, yet it was clear he might not have been acting alone. To verify his statements, the police consulted technical experts who recovered deleted files from the flash drive. Among them was a document marked Key 29, which listed names and addresses, including several local officials. This confirmed the suspicions. Jack had uncovered an influence network extending beyond Frostville to neighboring towns. Uncovering these connections was a turning point. Now, investigators had to determine how deeply corruption had infiltrated the system and whether Brendan was merely following orders. All roads seemed to lead to something far more significant than simple personal revenge. The flash drive found in Jack's car shed light on the case, but also made the investigation more complex. It not only contained incriminating footage of Brendan's meetings, but also financial reports indicating money laundering through a series of shell companies. Investigators felt they were closing in on exposing a massive corruption ring. However, the most crucial piece was a text file in which Jack expressed concerns about his safety. He mentioned receiving threats but didn't specify from whom. The final lines were particularly alarming. "If something happens to me, you will know where to look." This file was a breakthrough. It confirmed that Jack was aware of the danger but chose to proceed alone. Brendan now seemed more than just suspicious. He was emerging as a central figure in the conspiracy. The police conducted an urgent search of his office, uncovering something shocking. The same documents previously found in Jack's safe. These detailed records of illicit financial flows and links to local criminal groups left no doubt about Brendan's involvement. The coincidence was too striking to ignore. It appeared Brendan had kept copies of all the incriminating materials, perhaps as leverage. But why hadn't he destroyed them? Was he truly part of the scheme? Or was he trying to maintain control over the situation? Brendan was immediately taken into custody for questioning. Throughout the interrogation, he remained confident, even defiant, dismissing the allegations. "You're making a big mistake," he insisted. "These documents came from Jack himself. He wanted my help, but I told him it was too dangerous. He decided to go it alone." His words raised doubts. If true, why hadn't Jack reported his suspicions formally? And why had he kept the material secret? At this point, the investigation hit a dead end. The team had undeniable evidence of corruption, but couldn't definitively prove that Brendan orchestrated Jack's murder. When the pressure mounted, Brendan abruptly shifted his tone. "You're looking in the wrong place. I'm not the one who took Jack out," he said. "The real threat is closer than you think." This statement sent chills through the team. Was Brendan trying to mislead them? Or was there indeed someone else behind it all? Meanwhile, forensic experts provided a new lead. Fingerprints on Jack's service weapon didn't match his or Brendan's. This revelation put the entire investigation in jeopardy. If Brendan wasn't the shooter, who was this third party? The investigators decided to re-examine all the evidence. Another intriguing file on the flash drive had gone unnoticed earlier. It mentioned a scheduled meeting between Jack and an anonymous informant. The location was clearly indicated, an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. This site now became their focal point. Investigators realized it could hold the answers to all their questions. The next day, the team set out for the warehouse. They sensed this location could be the key to unlocking the truth, but they also knew it might hold unforeseen dangers. The investigation was gaining momentum, but with every new piece of evidence, Detective Jack Porter's killer seemed more elusive than ever. A search of the warehouse mentioned in Jack's files confirmed his suspicions. The premises had been used to store drugs and illegal weapons. However, the investigators found no direct evidence linking the warehouse to Brendan or any of the individuals in Jack's files. It all seemed as if someone had carefully erased their tracks. Soon, the case took another unexpected turn. Forensic analysis revealed foreign fingerprints on Jack's service pistol, which had been found near his body. This discovery cast doubt on earlier theories of self-defense or potential suicide. The investigators ran the prints through their database, and the results were surprising. They belonged to Tom Randall, a former Frostville police officer who had been dismissed a year prior for abuse of power. Tom Randall was notorious in the town for his abrasive personality and questionable ethics. He frequently clashed with colleagues, and after his dismissal, he joined a private security firm. His firing had been surrounded by scandal. Tom had openly accused the department of conspiring against him and even filed a lawsuit, which he ultimately lost. Investigators immediately questioned whether he might be seeking revenge for his ruined career. Randall was brought in for interrogation. He denied any involvement in Jack's murder, claiming he had been home that night. His alibi was backed by his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Grayson. However, investigators uncovered a significant detail. The day before the murder, Tom had been driving a pickup truck that was spotted near Route 29. They began tracing all his recent connections, and the web of intrigue only grew. It turned out that Tom had ties to a local gang Jack had previously brought to justice. This group was well known for its dominance over the town's illegal drug trade. Jack's earlier investigation had dealt a severe blow to their operations, and rumors circulated that they were eager for revenge. But could Tom have joined forces with them to settle his personal grudge against Jack? Another key piece of testimony emerged. A local truck driver reported seeing a suspicious pickup near Route 29 that night. He described a man resembling Tom arguing with someone in the dark. The police decided to follow this lead, but they lacked concrete proof. Tom maintained his silence, and without solid evidence, they couldn't charge him. The situation grew more complex. The investigators had strong suspicions, but the lack of definitive proof hindered their progress. To uncover more, they conducted a detailed analysis of Tom's financial records and phone logs, searching for any clue that might confirm his involvement in the conspiracy. Meanwhile, Frostville was gripped by unease. Residents discussed the case in hushed tones, and rumors spread rapidly. For a town that prided itself on safety, the murder of a respected detective was a profound shock. Everyone now realized that Frostville harbored secrets capable of upending many lives. Tom Randall found himself at the center of the investigation, but his behavior only complicated the detective's efforts. Despite mounting circumstantial evidence, He adamantly denied any involvement in Jack Porter's murder. His confidence cast doubt on his guilt, but also added an air of intrigue. The investigators understood that if Tom knew something, he was stalling for time, and time was not on their side as each passing day distanced them further from the crime. The first step was to verify Tom's alibi. Mrs. Grayson confirmed she had seen him at home that night, but her testimony seemed unreliable. The elderly woman's health was frail, and she could have been mistaken about the time or even the event itself. Investigators decided to check Tom's phone records to pinpoint his exact location on the night of the murder. The data revealed that his phone had connected to cell towers near Route 29 multiple times, despite his claims of staying home. Meanwhile, experts analyzed footage from surveillance cameras near the warehouse where Jack and Brendan were seen arguing earlier. The recording showed a pickup truck resembling Tom's. Although the images were blurry, the license plate matched his vehicle, confirming he had been in the area the day before the murder. Yet, this alone didn't establish a direct link to the crime. To get closer to the truth, the investigators decided to increase the pressure. Tom was summoned for another round of questioning, this time confronted with evidence of his presence near the crime scene. During the interrogation, he remained calm, even when shown the footage. "Yes, I was near the warehouse," Tom admitted, "but that doesn't prove anything. I was just visiting an old acquaintance. I had nothing to do with Jack's death." Once again, his explanation failed to convince the investigators, who resolved to dig deeper. Then a new and mysterious element surfaced. A note was discovered in Jack's pocket that had previously gone unnoticed. On the scrap of paper was a single name: Robert. No one on the investigative team recognized it, and Jack's files offered no clue as to who this Robert might be. The detectives decided to comb through Jack's recent contacts to uncover the significance of this name. They located one of Jack's former informants, who agreed to speak under strict anonymity. The informant revealed that Robert was a member of a gang Jack had investigated years earlier. Robert had vanished after that case, but was rumored to have returned to town with serious plans. This revelation deepened the mystery. If Robert was indeed involved, how had his name ended up in Jack's pocket? Could he have been the anonymous informant Jack was supposed to meet at the warehouse? The investigators pored over Jack's old case files related to the gang, hoping to find any trace of this enigmatic figure. The pressure on the investigative team mounted. The town demanded answers, but every new lead only expanded the pool of suspects. Brendan remained in custody, but his direct involvement in the murder seemed less certain. Tom continued to deny everything, and without concrete evidence, they couldn't indict him. Meanwhile, the elusive Robert loomed as a shadowy figure who might hold the key to the case. The investigation had turned into a game of cat and mouse, and the detectives had to act quickly to stay ahead of the killer's next move. The old warehouse mentioned in Jack's files became the next key location for the investigation. The police conducted a thorough search, inspecting every corner of the building. At first glance, the place seemed abandoned, but in one of the back rooms, they discovered a hidden cache. Inside were crates of illegal weapons, drugs, and documents that confirmed financial transactions through shell companies. The most critical find, however, was a set of files naming Brendan Hale and several other influential figures. The investigators gathered everything they found and began analyzing it. They uncovered that the warehouse had been a primary hub for drug trafficking, with all operations meticulously documented. The papers revealed substantial sums of money being funneled through accounts linked to Brendan, suggesting he played a key role in the scheme, using his position to shield the illegal activities. Among the documents was a list of phone calls. One name stood out: Robert Knox. This confirmed suspicions about the mysterious Robert, whose name had been found in Jack's pocket. Further analysis revealed that Knox was a figure in one of Jack's past investigations involving a gang that had long dominated the region's illicit activities. While the investigators pieced together the evidence, new information emerged. Tom Randall, who had previously denied involvement, began showing signs of nervousness. During a subsequent interrogation, he finally cracked and admitted to being on Route 29 that night, but he claimed he had gone there under Brendan's orders. "He told me to meet Jack and scare him," Tom confessed. "But when I arrived, Jack was already lying in the snow." This statement changed the direction of the investigation. It now became clear that Brendan had arranged the meeting with Jack on the highway. However, Tom's confession also implied that someone else might have been the actual killer. This raised the question, could Robert Knox have been involved in the plot, or was he merely a shadowy figure operating behind the scenes? With enough evidence in hand, the police obtained a warrant for Brendan's arrest. When he was brought to the station, he remained silent, even when confronted with the documents recovered from the warehouse. But the most crucial discovery was a message on Brendan's phone sent the night of the murder, instructing Tom to deal with Porter. This became the decisive proof of Brendan's involvement in the conspiracy. Brendan was officially charged with participating in criminal activity and covering up the murder. However, despite his arrest, one question remained unresolved. Who pulled the trigger? Investigators turned their attention to Robert Knox's recent activities. The results were startling. Knox had been in town just days before the murder, but had disappeared immediately afterward. A manhunt was launched to find him. The final lead brought the investigators to an abandoned building on the outskirts of Frostville, where Knox was rumored to be hiding. When the special task force surrounded the site, no one could predict what awaited them inside. All evidence pointed to the fact that the ultimate truth was within their grasp. Surrounding the abandoned building on the outskirts of Frostville, investigators were confident that Robert Knox was the final link in solving Jack Porter's murder. Assisted by the special task force, they entered the premises, which at first glance appeared deserted. The dimly lit hallways, scattered crates, and worn furniture suggested no one had lived there for some time. In the basement, however, they found signs that the place had recently been used. A search of the surrounding area yielded no trace of the suspect. During their inspection, the team discovered a hidden door leading to a narrow underground passage. It felt as though Knox was only steps ahead of them. They pursued the trail, emerging into the forest, where they ultimately lost the tracks. Despite their best efforts, Knox had vanished once again. It was a heavy blow to an already pressured investigation, but the laptop found in the basement offered a potential breakthrough. Forensic experts quickly recovered deleted files. Among them were communications detailing the operation Jack had been investigating before his death. In these exchanges, Knox discussed large drug shipments with unidentified accomplices. More significantly, one document outlined plans to eliminate a threat to the criminal network, Jack Porter. One file contained an audio recording of a conversation where a man's voice stated, "Porter is getting too close. He's a risk we can't afford. We need to resolve this." The voice was clear, and experts confirmed it belonged to Brendan Hale. This provided irrefutable evidence of Brendan's role in orchestrating the conspiracy. Yet one critical question remained. Was he the one who fired the fatal shot? During his trial, Brendan continued to claim he had been set up. His defense tried to argue that he was acting within the bounds of his duties and had no motive to kill Jack. However, the evidence told a different story. The videos, financial records, and Tom Randall's confession built a solid case against him. Under mounting pressure, Brendan admitted to being an accomplice, but maintained that Robert Knox was the shooter. The trial became a media sensation, with daily updates broadcast across the nation. Frostville, once a quiet town, was thrust into the spotlight. The jury delivered a verdict of life imprisonment for Brendan, citing his involvement in conspiracy, corruption, and covering up the murder. Yet even with this conviction, a bitter truth lingered. Jack's true killer remained at large. Jack Porter's family was left devastated. His wife, Sarah, struggled with guilt, unable to understand why Jack had taken such risks without confiding in her. Their daughter, just beginning her adult life, now bore the weight of knowing her father had died in pursuit of justice. The Frostville Police Department underwent sweeping reforms in the aftermath. Several high-ranking officials were dismissed, and the newly appointed chief vowed to overhaul the system completely. But for the town's residents, the scars remained. The story of corruption, betrayal, and Jack Porter's death had forever changed Frostville, leaving behind a wound that would never fully heal.